All right, good morning. Today you are going to be working on a couple of practice problems for Park. I'm going to walk through a couple of the answers with you just to get yourself started so you know what it should look like. And the expectation is that you are spending the entire time on this, and I will leave with Miss Howard a number that you need to get to. And if you do not get to that, then the rest will be your homework for the evening. So as we look about which equation is true, here is knowing the rules of negatives. And so I'm just going to go through and I'm going to think to myself, I want for this one to have a positive divided by a positive, or a positive fraction. So I know that the negative divided by a negative gives me a positive number. So I'm going to rewrite that. But then notice that last little negative is in here makes this one a not true answer because a positive does not equal a negative. As we keep moving forward, again, knowing rules of negatives, I know the negative divided by a negative is going to be a positive number. If I look over here, this is not a positive number, therefore we know B cannot be true. Moving on down. Looking inside the parentheses first, the positive divided by the negative is a negative number. And then if I have a negative of a negative of a negative, then that really means the answer is a positive. And hey, what do you know? This guy is a positive number. And just to make sure the last one is not correct, I keep moving on. And I see I have a positive divided by a negative, that's a negative number. And then here in the parentheses, this is a negative number, but then I've got the negative of the negative, which actually makes that a positive number, and therefore no bueno. Moving on down to number 2. Yvonne uses 5 tablespoons of butter. That is a lot of butter. For a second recipe, she uses 10% less than she did for the first time. The total amount, blah, blah, can be used given the expression. So this is nice. They actually give me my expression that I can use to work with. Now, a few things about the expression. Notice how we have my original that I start with. And then, and then we've got this plus 5 minus 5 times the 10%. And so then this is the start of the second recipe, but then this is the 10% less. Now there's a few ways that we can solve this. We can look at what is going on with the 5s and say to myself, well, I know that we have 10 tablespoons found roughly in both of them, but then I need to get rid of that 10%. And being the good math student I am, I'm going to write 10% as the decimal. So I can go forward and I can say, all right, well, where do I go from here? Well, I could go ahead and multiply this, and that would work. I don't need to do that. What I could also do is I could also think about, instead of me subtracting 10%, I can think about how much am I actually keeping of that. So if I'm going to subtract 10%, if I start with 100% and get rid of 10%, I'm actually keeping 90%. And so if I head back and I look here, and say I start with this original. That's great. But then instead of this equation here, if I take the 90%, we're going to write it as a decimal, of what I started with, that's going to be the same thing as this right here. So then if I come and look over here, I see, all right, I know I'm starting with one of the 5s. And then I think, where else do we see this? And we see this right here as the 90% of 5. Moving on to 3 and 4, as the current temperature is -7 outside. The high temperature yesterday was as many degrees above 0 as the current temperature is below 0. So if I were just to make a number line, and I think to myself, the current temperature, how far below 0 it is, I'd say, well, we are 7 places below 0. So the high temperature yesterday was that many degrees above 0. And that takes me to the 7. Now, my answer is not done yet. It says, which expression could be used to find the number of degrees between the current temperature and yesterday's temperature? So we're looking for this whole distance here. So let's come on over and say, it's a 7 and a 7. Sure enough, we have a 7 and a 7. Number 4, Michael paid a total of $48 for 4 pizzas. He used a coupon for $4 off the entire order. The equation below can be used to determine the regular price of 1 pizza. What is the regular price of 1 pizza? The easiest way to solve this is by doing some train tracks. Now I'm left with this multiplication here. I want to undo the multiplication so we can divide by 4 on both sides. And I get that 1 pizza cost me $13. I will have an answer key up by tomorrow morning that will just have numbers on it. You need to make sure that you show all of your work like it says on Schoology, and I will see you on Thursday. Have a good day.